I'm always on the lookout for cheap and cheerful puzzle games, and Settris is the latest one to cross my desk. It's a block placement puzzle game that reminds me of a little bit of a mix between the jigsaw puzzle game Glass Masquerade, but also Blokus, the board game, and also the digital game, with a little bit of influence of Tetris thrown in there too. This is an arrangement game, so you're given a defined area to fit various different Tetris-inspired blocks inside, but you can rotate them, but you can also mirror flip them, and you'll often have to do both to make sure everything fits quite nicely. There's a stage mode which contains 80 levels, and it starts off very, very simply, but then starts to add in a couple of extra mechanics. Obviously, the first thing is just like making sure that walls get in the different defined areas, and sometimes that helps you to solve a level because some blocks will only fit in certain areas, but other times it kind of throws you off from how you would normally solve something. The second mechanic is a bit more interesting, which is where it colours certain areas of the map, so you're going to have to place the right coloured blocks in those areas. And what that quite often does is it makes what would have been a very easily solvable puzzle area now slightly more awkward because it's not so easily defined, because it's normally one of the angular weird blocks that you have to kind of colour in at the right spot. Is it particularly hard? No, but it will get you pausing for thought for a few seconds just whilst you're rearranging all of the things spatially in your brain before you can then solve the puzzle itself. But there's no time limit. The difficulty increases slowly as you go through the 80 levels, and it does provide a fair challenge towards the end of the run. I had more fun though in time attack mode, which surprised me, and this gives you 5 minutes to solve as many puzzles as possible that contain 3, 4 or 5 blocks. With the 3 blocks, you are literally solving it in front of your eyes, so you're just clicking and dragging and going at speed to see how far you can get on the online leaderboard. Whereas with the 4 and 5 block versions, again, you're pausing for thought, rearranging things spatially inside your mind's eye, and then going for it as quick as possible to see how quickly you can get up the online leaderboards. But it's funny that when you've got a time limit going, sometimes your brain freezes, and then you're like, oh, come on, Simon. This would have been solved ages ago if you was playing in stage mode. So it made me feel a bit stupid sometimes, but in a good way. Outside of that, there's very little with Settris that's there else to offer. I do feel like this is missing a 2-player head-to-head mode where it would have given you 10 randomly generated stages from the time attack mode, for instance, so you could race against each other. And there's a game that kind of is jigsaw based on PlayStation I've got called Cluster Tumble, which does something similar-ish with jigsaw puzzles, where at least you're racing against each other to solve something. And I feel like Settris would have benefited from that element. But what's here is perfectly fine, and for a £2 price point, I'm not going to sneer too much. Lastly, I'd just like to give a shout out and a thumbs up to the general aesthetic of this game, which screams Japanese arcade in the year 2000. Big chunky graphics, really huge UI, and a ridiculously over-the-top and oversized mouse cursor, and then really, really happy, over-the-top, chirpy MIDI music going on in the background too. Yeah, I'm a sucker for all of that, and it's great to be dragged back to the year 2000 when life in the world seemed so much more simpler. Long may Zoo Corporation continue to shove that in their games. So yeah, pleasantly surprised with this. It's not going to change your life, but it's a nice little addition on your budget end version of a puzzle game. Settris, out now.